Welcome to the No More Dead Friends podcast. I am your host, James Evans. We are not affiliated with any 12-step fellowship. If you are interested in meetings, please seek out a local 12-step meeting in your area. If you or a loved one is struggling with addiction and think that you might need treatment, please call 858-790-1937 to see what treatment options are available to you in your area. If you are having a medical emergency, please dial 911. All right, welcome to another episode of the No More Dead Friends podcast. I'm your host, James Evans. Here with me today is my good buddy, Daniel Nuno. What's going on, Daniel?
Hey, what's up, James?
Not much, man. Just got inside trying to stay warm from this rain. I don't know if it's pouring where you're at yet, but it is coming down here and thunder and lightning, and it's crazy. So glad.
Someone was saying that they're like seeding the air, which is why it's been so crazy. Kind of like, so this last Friday, it was Friday. It was supposed to be like completely sunny, completely clear. I had all my family over. We're like, cool, I'm gonna get a taco man to come over. Anyways, they come over, and literally like 30 minutes later, it's like the worst rainstorm, and it was not on the forecast. It just popped up same day. So I don't know what's going on with the weather right now.
It's that bipolar California weather that we get in March and April. So well, and not to skip to the end of your story and all the good stuff that starts happening in life once you get sober and you get your shit together. But the taco man, so he was coming over. You're having a kid, right? So
Yeah.
baby shower.
Yeah, so my family all came out for a baby shower. We had other family, my wife's family, and some friends, and it was it was mainly just the baby shower on Saturday, but all of my family and her family got together on Friday, and then Saturday after the baby shower, we all got together, and yeah, man, it's really, really interesting, I guess, is to say the least, where my life's at today. It's quite amazing.
It's beautiful, man. It's beautiful. And it happens time and time and again with those of us who really did not feel like we deserved a better life, man. And all we do is we stay sober a bit. And once the light starts clicking and things start happening, life takes off and it gets big before we know it. But super grateful to have you on. Actually, I'm sure you remember, and I've never told anybody this yet, but I'm sure you remember the first time you met and you toured at Restore with me, and we were just kind of hanging out in that back room at Restore and just talking, and you started sharing some of your story, and I was sharing some of my story, and we were basically just kind of like sitting there bullshit. And that was really like the first time I had the thought of like, dude, I need to do a podcast. Like I talked to so many cool people in recovery, like I need to be recording these conversations that I have on a daily basis. And, that was that was a year and a half ago, coming up on 2 years ago now. That was a minute ago. And it's taken me a while to get into action because like I really wanted to do this like in person and, have the visual with the audio. And I just had this like picture of like perfection that I wanted. And, I had the realization, like 4 months ago, like, dude, I just gotta do it, right? I gotta stop worrying about what I want it to look like, and I just gotta do it. And just like being in recovery, everything's gonna work out from there. But that initial thought, right, was sitting at Restore, talking to you, listening to you,
Wow.
tell your story. You were talking about, going to beachside and all that stuff, and that's where it kind of like clicked in my head where I got that inspiration for it. So it's super, super awesome to finally have you on here.
Dude, if I could say something to that too, I'll just say I'm really proud of you, man. Like I know for me personally too, like with certain things, I wanted things to be perfect and, be a certain way. And I'm just so happy that you just did it, bro. Like when I saw your first episode that you shared on Facebook, I was like, am I allowed to swear on this?
Yeah, you're
I was
good.
like, fuck yeah, dude. I was so happy. I was just like, dude, this is amazing. And like, I think oftentimes, we get in our head about how we want things to be or how things need to be before we take our next step. But thank goodness for the things we've learned in recovery that have taught us like more will be revealed. The path will the path will be illuminated as we take steps forward. So I'm really proud of you, man. This is amazing.
Yeah, I really appreciate that, and it's no different than getting sober. Anything that I've accomplished in my sobriety, it's like I can sit there and I can think about it and I can think about it and all I got to do is do it, right? Or like the big hurdle everybody goes through is that fourth step, right? It's like you can take 6 months thinking about your fourth step and then you take an afternoon of writing or a couple days of writing and you'll have it done and you'll be ready to get on to that fifth step and move forward, right? And then on to a better life.
Totally.
So, we've known each other for coming up on a couple years now. We've become pretty good buddies. And I've heard, a good portion of your story, but I don't know everything, right? So what did kind of growing up look like for you? What did childhood look for you and how were you raised and what did everything look like maybe before you started using?
Yeah, man, that's a really good question. So I'm the youngest of six kids. I would say looking back, like I grew up in an amazing family environment, and being the youngest of six kids, I think by the time I came along, my parents were just like, you know what, do do whatever you got to do, like do your thing,
Whatever happens, happens.
Yeah, yeah, this kid's gonna be okay. No, man, I was surrounded with a lot of love um and my parents were young, man. My parents were young when they got married. I'll tell you this, my mom was 15 when she had my oldest sister, and my dad was 16 or 17. So they were really young when they got together and they started a family. Um, and my oldest sister is actually 15 years older than me. So the same gap between my mom and my sister is the same age gap between my sister and myself. And so, I grew up in a family predominantly Mormon. We grew up, my parents were converts to the Mormon religion. And I think that though I'm not affiliated with that religion I'm not affiliated with that religion anymore. I'm very grateful for, the structure that it gave me and like the beliefs and this community and all the good things that came with that. I'm so thankful for that. And I know it also um, gave my mom. So my mom comes from she was like an only child. She actually had a half brother who kind of just went his own way. And with her parents, even she was more of like the parent. And
Yeah.
so I know for my mom, being active in a religion was important for her. It gave her community. It gave us like a bunch of people to be around, like with youth groups and scouts and stuff like that. And so I was kind of just like, I would say probably up until I was maybe 11 or 12, I was kind of just like wanting to go to heaven. That's all I could think about.
Yeah.
I was like, I just want to go to heaven. Like, I want to do the right things. And then I don't know. I don't know. As I turned 12 and I just wanted to experiment with different things and I wanted to try new things. And I want to say when I was 12, my childhood best friend Ronnie and I, we would always go camping up in Santa Cruz, and um, we bought like a nickel bag of this just red bud, and it was it was like absolutely trash, right? And I think we even gave the kid like $4. We didn't even have a full $5 bill, and then we're sitting there like trying to decide if we're gonna rip pages out of my older brother's Bible to smoke a joint or like how we're gonna smoke it. So we ended up smoking it out of a can, and I would say from like 12 to 18, all through high school, I was kind of partying like that. For me, it looked more like smoking weed and drinking, and that was always what it was. And when I first started high school, I remember I would go to parties with my older sister, who's a couple years older, because she had to take me out sometimes. My parents would be like, "You can't go." We would say we were going to like Rock and Bowl or something like that, but we were really going to parties. So she's like, "Take your younger
Like your
brother."
brother.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So I'd be at these parties and I just wanted to fit in. So I would just try and like drink as much as possible, and I and I really liked the way that it made me feel. I felt like I was a part of, and so I yeah, so that was kind of like my high school. I did sports in high school. I feel like I always was given the benefit of the doubt. I don't know why, but I was always given the benefit of the doubt, and I was always, generally kind to people, but doing stupid shit, man.
For
Just
sure. And I was the same way. I mean, looking back, it's like the majority of the time, like, I was a pretty good dude, but I was up to mischief, dude. I was just as guilty as anybody else, running out, getting in trouble and doing crazy shit. But like, I came from, at least on the surface, a pretty similar background, and it's like I was always just a good kid. So once I started doing wild shit, like I still had that like I still had that like not that I know there's no like honor amongst thieves, but I still like I had that moral compass in me, right? To where like I wouldn't want to like cross certain lines, and then but then some people who like I didn't know or whatever, they would get it, right? Because it'd be like certain people would act tough, or sometimes like just like I didn't really like rob too many people, but when I did, dude, it was like it was never anybody I ever knew, but it
right.
like we just hit the lick on these people. Like I remember we were at this party in Temecula, and I didn't even none of us knew the kid, but then somehow this like group of us Murrieta kids are at this Temecula party, and we just realized that we didn't know anybody there. So we're like walking out the front door with the TV and the Xbox and all the games and shit.
You're
And
like,
it's
at least
like,
it's not a friend, At least
yeah,
it's
yeah,
not my friend.
But like amongst like the core of friends stuff, like we weren't ever doing anything shady to each other. We were just like, but that moral compass, right, of like always wanting to like at least have people's back and like delusionally feel like we're being like good people, even though we're like, not doing the right thing. But then part of that's just like being young and dumb and thinking you got it figured out, and you really just don't know anything about the world yet.
Oh, dude, yeah, and to kind of continue in that on that story, I I went through high school like that, partied, whatnot. Then so growing up in a Mormon household, when you turn like 18 or 19, it was 19 when I was growing up.
Mission
You could go and
time.
serve a church mission. Yeah. And so, I kind of had like a spiritual experience. When I did this, I went to like this like church camp thing, and I was like, you know what, I'm gonna go serve a mission. And it was actually really a great experience for me, man. I was like, I stopped drinking for the year prior. I stopped doing anything else that I shouldn't have been doing, whatever that looked like, a year prior. And like, it's like, okay, I got 1 year clean. I can leave on my mission. And I served in Detroit, Michigan. And it was neat, man. We did a lot of service. I really got out of myself. I feel like, outside of the recovery that I have now, that was a really awesome time for me just to not be so self-centered and selfish. And although I didn't understand, why I felt so good about myself, looking back, it was because I wasn't so selfish, in those moments. And
Yeah.
so I served a church mission for 2 years in Detroit in the inner city. I'm talking murder capital of the US. I think at the time it was between 2003, 2005, or it was at least top three. Um, and cool. Everyone was very, respectful of us, and we did a lot of service for like HUD homes, for cleaning out old trap houses or burnt down houses because there's just a ton of them there,
Hmm.
and so that was an awesome experience for me. Um, and I come back, and looking back, and I'm sure you can relate. Like, we have a belief system that are like these attachments that we have, the way that either we were raised, our religion, our culture, our family dynamic, or like it's inherent in us, where we think like we need certain things in order to be happy. And so that kind of was a part of my path. I kind of just like fell in line when I got home. What's the next step for a young Mormon kid is he's going to get married. So you get married and you have a lot of kids, and that's the next step for you. And in my mind, that's what my attachment was. That was part of like one of my many attachments, was this need to, kind of take that next step. So I got married at 22 when I got back. And I mean, I could say for myself, I was not ready to get married, dude. Like, I was so young, I was so immature, I was like just thinking I knew everything and I didn't know shit, is really what it came down to. Um, we tried for, just to share some personal stuff. We tried to have kids because that's also an attachment that I had, was like, oh, I need to have kids in order to feel, a part of, or like I'm on the right track.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and we tried and tried, could never have kids. So there was a time in there where, actually, there was a long time in there while I was married, in my 20s, that I always felt like less than, because I didn't have children, and that was like a part of my culture. And that's, God's going to bless you with kids if you're doing the right thing. So I'm just always like, oh, fuck, man, I must not be doing the right thing. And I wasn't, in a lot of ways, dude. I was being an idiot. At 24, that's when I got into smoking weed.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, oh, I'm going to try smoking weed. And I did, and I liked it. And I was like, this is awesome. This is,
Yeah.
uh, takes my mind off of things. I could game, I could freaking just zone out. And then I was drinking a little bit. Um, I was hanging out with my boys because I played football in college. And so I was hanging out with a lot of my boys, and, you know, just wanting to be with the boys, always wanting to be with the boys. And, and, um, due to that, and also other reasons, my ex actually ended up having an affair when I was about 25. And, at this point, I'm smoking, drinking, hanging out with my boys. Oh, I'm also I think at this time, oh yeah, I'm using Oxycontin and selling Oxycontin.
Okay.
I'm like heavy into oxys, and selling them in Utah. It was like a great market for it.
So
And
were you in Utah? Did you go out there for school?
yeah, yeah. So I
Yeah.
went to the University of Utah, um, and got married
Mm-hmm.
there. And then I just ended up staying in Utah, actually, until I went to rehab when I was 34. So
34. So from 25 to 34, there's still, quite a bit of running and gunning before.
oh, dude, so much. Oh, I
So
did so much stupid shit. Yeah.
yeah, so at 25, so the oxys were already in the picture at that point, because I was gonna ask kind of like,
Yeah.
when did the shift go from like just kind of casual using to just like crossing that threshold, and obviously going from weed to oxys. I mean, that's a pretty big boy step up.
Oh yeah. The so the so I'm sorry. The oxys and all of this crazy shit happened even before my ex had an affair. So
Okay.
I was I was being an absolute lunatic, at this point. I
Hmm.
was going back and forth from oxys. Once those run out, I'm like, who the fuck has Suboxone? And I take Suboxone for a week or something. And then I'd have to like stop taking that so that I could start taking my oxys again. And I was so my initial idea was, well, I'll say this. So OxyContin became really hot in Utah.
Yeah.
And I would always tell my boys, yo, don't use that shit. That shit's too much. It's too much. And then I tried it, and I'm like, okay,
Stuff's great.
this is amazing. This is awesome, actually.
Yeah.
Because my initial idea was, I'm just going to sell it and make a shit ton of money, and then just keep stacking money. What ended up happening is I'm using it all and just paying for it. And
Yeah.
and I had my supplier where we essentially we split the profits 50-50, but there were no profits, so I just had to give them 50 because
Yeah.
I was using all of it. That's what it came to, is like, I'm using everything that I get, and then I'm trying to buy more because I hate the feeling of withdrawals. Like that, there was no bigger fear in my life at 25, 24 than withdrawals from opiates, dude. That was it. Like you couldn't tell me anything was scarier than that.
Yeah, yeah, and I really only withdrew like from opiates and from the opiates I really only had withdrawals once and it wasn't like that bad, right? Like I was doing more like Norcos and even though somas aren't opiates, I was doing a lot of Norcos and somas like together.
Oh yeah.
And then so coming off of like basically almost a month period of doing that, that was my first real time like detoxing from the opiates and feeling that withdrawal. And then the benzos, like I loved bars. Like bars was the thing that like I would feel that detox from when I'd come out of I'd pick up 50 bars and I would essentially wake up a week later.
Yeah.
I would go into a blackout and I would wake up a week later and I'd have wallets, I'd have keys, I'd have all kinds of shit that wasn't mine. And I'd be like, where'd all my bars go? And I'd be like, oh shit, it's the 27th. I thought it was the 19th.
Exactly.
Of
What
course the
happened to
bars are gone.
Halloween? They're like, that was last week.
So the bar like the benzos I've withdrawn from a few times. But the opiates, man, I just sometimes I would pop some like coming down and stuff because I was mainly into like psychedelics and stimulants. Like that was my thing, right? Like I loved crack, I loved cocaine, I loved methamphetamine.
Let's go.
And I love to take acid and do all kinds of weird shit like that. But so those withdrawals, man, it's no joke, dude. It's no fun. It's fucking miserable. And
Yeah.
to me, the trade-off, the feeling of the opiates was never enough because I wanted to be on it like supersonic and just be fucking going, and those opiates would put me to sleep.
Dude, you know what's so funny is like sometimes I forget all the shit that I was involved in. So before I got into oxys, I was big into somas and Norcos, and I had a huge plug in
Mhm,
California where I could essentially get like 500 at a time. You
mhm.
know, I'm talking like, and and I would take those, and then I would take my Adderall and Valium because if you pop them both at the same time, and if you pop enough, you will be the best worker, at your job.
Or at least
That's what I'm telling myself,
you
anyways.
think so. When you're looking through that tunnel vision, you think you're
Yeah,
killing
dude.
it, dude.
Dude, I imagine what I look like. People are probably like, "What the fuck's the matter with Daniel?" And I probably just think I'm absolutely crushing it.
Yep.
This dude's fucking weird,
Yep.
Why are his eyes always falling down?
So you're 25, your wife at the time has an affair. How did that like come to light? What happened? What did the future look for like for you?
Yeah. So it actually came to light. So it was with a good friend of mine. And we happened to be in Vegas, and I we were sharing a room together, him and I,
Hmm.
and his phone keeps buzzing, and then I check it, and it's my wife, at the time saying crazy stuff, and my heart just drops. And I'm just like, what is going on right here? And I couldn't believe it. I go back and like read everything, and I'm like, yo, this is insane. Like this is like not happening. And immediately my mind goes, okay, because I don't know how to process shit
Yeah.
well, and I don't have healthy coping skills. So I'm like, all right, how can we just say, hey, let's stop doing this and make everything better, Because
Mhm.
I'm a people pleaser, but also my ego is so big that I don't know how to express like how much this hurt me. And
Yeah.
I don't know how to ask people for help. And I don't know how to even tell somebody else. And I'm talking about like my childhood best friend Ronnie, the dude I smoked weed with for the first time. He would be somebody that I could tell anything to. I couldn't tell Ronnie what happened for 2 years, bro. I internalized this situation, and
And just
it
carried
was
that.
just carried it with me, bro. And I just numbed it.
Yep.
So I found out about it, and I didn't know how to cope with it, but I wanted to keep it a secret because I didn't want to appear to be like somebody who couldn't keep his wife, whose wife's stepping out on him, you know, who doesn't have their shit together, or for whatever reason, I was putting it all on me. You
Mm-hmm.
know, that choice that was made was a reflection of me, you know, and so I carried that with me. I wore it. And the interesting thing is uh so just to kind of compound the situation, I get back home and I'm obviously like extremely upset. Um, I turn into this like verbally abusive guy who just wants to numb the pain. And, you know, if I want to numb the pain with opiates, with alcohol, with weed, with whatever, it's going to be acceptable because look at what you did, you know, and that was me putting the blame on someone else, you know, for my own life at the time and my emotions. And and so what compounded it is, as I said, I was heavily involved in the Mormon church, and so we go and we meet with our ecclesiastical leader, who's called the bishop, and from the bishop we meet with the stake president, and when we meet with the stake president, he's like, okay, well, you know, we're gonna have to do what's it called? It's like basically like a church court, you know, to see if what kind of church discipline is going to happen. And in my mind, I'm thinking like, yeah, let's get this discipline on. You know, she needs to be disciplined.
Yeah.
So, but what ends up happening, and this is the bizarrest thing in the world, she gets excommunicated, right? Which is like, I'm like, yeah, of course, you know. And I had the absolute worst attitude during this whole thing. You know, they
Yeah.
asked me questions, and I'm like, you know, don't ask me no questions. Like, you know, I was just such a
Yeah. Like you're high and mighty and
yeah, yeah,
like
yeah.
you don't have a side of the street.
Yeah, yeah, exactly, dude. 100%. And so she gets excommunicated, and then I get excommunicated too at the same time. And you know, in hindsight, uh, there was really no reason that I understand as far as like the church manual goes, or like however they navigate that as to why I would have got excommunicated. But that's just what happened. And so what that did for me was, you know, I all of a sudden I don't have this like family foundation, and I don't have this religious foundation, and I'm just like completely lost, you
And that's
know?
been there since the beginning too.
Yeah, it's been there since the beginning. And and all of a sudden I just feel like I'm lost. And on top of it, my ego won't allow me to go and talk to people and go and process this in a healthy way, you know, and so it's like at that point, I just start numbing my feelings. I literally didn't want to wake up the next morning. You know, that's how it was for me. I was uh I was just in like so much pain and so lost, and my ego and my pride and my attachments were, you know, so strong that the only way out was just and I didn't contemplate actually like shooting myself or hanging myself. Like that wasn't a part of it, but I was always like drinking to be like, all right, if I don't wake up tomorrow, like that'll be good for
Yeah.
me.
Yeah.
Uh,
Just that oblivion. Like I don't want to be here anymore. I don't
yeah,
have a way
exactly.
out. So it's easier for me to think about just not being here.
Yeah, dude. And I remember one night I drank like a whole fifth of vodka, and I took all the rest of my Ambien. I want to say I had like 12 or 15 or 20. I don't know how many I took, but I took all of them. And I was just like, all right, we'll see. You know, like
Yeah.
we'll see what happens. That's just where I was at.
Yeah.
And I was okay with it. You know, I was okay with just not waking up. And and so strangely enough, like I continued to go to work, but you know, I was drinking on the job. I was self-medicating on the job. And it was always one thing or another. Either it was like an Adderall Valium cocktail, or, I would leave for lunch and grab like some liquor, or something like that. Um, and I was always making negotiations with myself, and it was always like, all right, if you go to work, then tonight you get to drink as much as you want. Or, if you drink right now, then you have to get up and go to work in the morning. Uh, and then like literally, I tried every sort of drink too. And even like when I went to wine, it would be like a whole box wine,
Yeah.
like a whole box of it.
Yeah, when I switched
Like
to
I don't want to
wine,
be.
I'd get the gallon of sangria and then a couple bottles of Moscato, and that's what we do. There's the super cheap something Rossi,
Carlo Rossi.
Carlo Rossi, those
Yeah.
those gallon jugs. I'd walk around like a pirate, and I'd have that and a couple bottles of Moscato.
That's awesome, dude.
But that was like me. I'm just drinking wine tonight, you know?
Yeah, dude. I'm not gonna do anything too crazy. Just a little, just some wine. Um, so anyways, so my drinking and stuff and my just outrageous behavior, you know, because I caused a lot of wreckage. I caused a lot of wreckage before I was drinking heavy, and before, you know, I use my ex having an affair just kind of like as a marker for me. But my behavior and selfishness and self-centeredness and self-seeking has been my whole life, man.
Yeah,
You know? And it was magnified when I was first married. And it was even more magnified, you know, when I didn't have a healthy coping skills during that time. Um, and the interesting thing is like the whole time I would, and my whole life up until, I got recovery, I was blaming everybody for how my life was, you
yeah,
know? It was everyone's fault. It was whether it was my coach's fault at Utah, or, you know, my wife's fault. It was my job's fault. It was the director at my job's fault. He shouldn't have fired me. I know I drank two Four Locos at lunch, but he should not have fired me. He's my friend, right? I was like so freaking
yeah,
delusional,
yep.
so delusional. And I mean, I'm sure you
Yeah,
have some stories that can kind of, relate to that
for
feeling.
sure. 100%, dude. I know exactly what you mean, dude. We just it's I in the simplest terms, because a lot of times, working the phones in treatment, I'm having to convey that mentality to a parent, right? So many times somebody's like it's just parents who are in a vulnerable position, and they have a child who's a complete idiot that thinks he's got it all figured out, and it's that type of thinking I convey to parents on at least a weekly basis of like, hey, I got sober at 24 years old. I know what it's like to be 21 and to think you got it all figured out and you don't know anything about the world yet. But like, there's hope for your son, there's hope for your daughter, and it's funny being where we're at today and being able to look at that, like, because I still remember being like so sure that like I'm the smartest fucking person in the room, and so
Oh, yeah.
sure I'm smarter than whoever I'm trying to fool, just like
Oh, dude.
so sure that I got this. You don't understand because you don't see what I'm seeing, and like
If
you just
you only had the intelligence I had, you
exactly.
could see what I'm seeing right now.
Exactly. So whenever, and that's why for me too, like when I got to treatment, the thing that like I loved the most was CBT, dude, cognitive behavioral therapy, because I got to sit there with someone who was smarter than me, who had like 10 to I think like 12 years of sobriety at the time, sit there with me and analyze my thinking and find my distorted thinking and like be able to start seeing like, wow, like I'm delusional. And I loved it because I was finally at this place where I was like, my second time going to treatment, I was ready to like really do it this time. Like the last time I was here, I tried it my way and it didn't work out. And this time I'm ready to really do this. And just getting into that delusional thinking, dude, is my favorite. I love cognitive behavioral therapy. It saved my life because that's what allows me today too. Like sometimes I get a paycheck and I'm like, dude, I can go grab this much meth or I can go grab this much that or this or whatever. Like I still have those thoughts, but because I know and I've done the work and I know my delusional thinking, I can like laugh at those thoughts and they're just like fleeting thoughts.
Yeah, no, totally. I even love today, like getting proven wrong. Like I love it because it's a healthy reminder, and I literally love it. Like I literally like, oh fuck, that's fucking awesome.
Yeah.
I was fucking wrong. I love that because for so long, like you mentioned, like I thought I had such a fixed and narrow mind, and I thought my way was the right way, and I thought I had thought of every angle and every situation, and uh, and yeah, to get around somebody who has years of sobriety, who's been there and can help me see my flawed thinking was just absolutely priceless. I remember the person who did it, his name's who I really liked. His name's Paxton Dickerson. I had a really great experience with him many times. You know, he would help me see my flawed thinking and just like how delusional I was. And he would just
Yeah.
call me on bullshit, you know? I'm like, oh yeah, well, you're right. Um, but just to kind of wrap the end of my career up. So, you know, my ex-wife got sick of my behavior. You know,
Hmm.
I wasn't nice. I just wasn't in a healthy space. You know, I was like not uh not a good partner. And so she filed for divorce. I got divorced at 31. And then kind of got into some different relationships. Always toxic because I was very toxic. You know, I was like the universe was giving me my exactly what I wanted, what I was looking for, you know? And it's even though like relationships were toxic and even though I have a general love for people and now, you know, I understand when we make mistakes, especially like in being kind to myself, when I make mistakes, I realize it's because I'm unaware of things, you know. It's something I'm not aware of. I try and remain teachable. And I think of that with other people, you know, whether it was like a toxic relationship or mistakes that happen in other relationships. It's like we're all growing and evolving,
Hmm.
you know, and these are things that the 12 steps have taught me as I work through those. Um, the kind of like the culmination of everything was when I was 34. I was at my parents' house for Thanksgiving, and I couldn't figure out how to stop drinking. I never thought of doing any kind of 12-step program or rehab. Like that just wasn't on my radar until that day. I was in their kitchen. Everyone was talking, having a great time, and seemingly enjoying each other's company. And all I could think about was, when can I get to my Forerunner? I have alcohol out there. I like, when is it going to be a good time? I'm like fake laughing with my parents so the conversation keep rolling so I could find a break and dip for like 10 minutes, you
Just
know?
step out.
Yeah, dude, I'm like, when can I just get out of here? And I couldn't be present. And oh, and on that day, I got a FedEx at my parents' house where I was getting fired for my job too. So so that along with the FedEx getting fired got me to a space where I was like, okay, where can I just get a reset? Where can I like still manipulate the situation where, you know, if I get a reset, then I can come back and life can go on as normal because life's great right now. It's fucking
Hmm.
awesome. Which it wasn't. It was not. It was not cool. Even it wasn't cool. But so I went to rehab. Well, we called and they're like, "Do you want to come to California?" I was like, "Sure, that sounds great. Whatever, whatever. I just need 30 days and then I can go back home and you know life is great again." We got there and they didn't have, I don't know if I told you this, they didn't have a 30-day thing when you like do your sign in stuff. And I remember this kid, his name's Taylor, and he was like, sorry, we only have 45 and 60-day options on like the intake. And I'm like, I'm not signing this fucking paperwork. I
Yeah.
only agree to 30 days. I'm like, I'll sign it if you put 30 days here and mark it. And so he's like, okay. So if it's 30 and marks it, I'm like, finally, you guys are getting in line with what I want, like this is perfect. Um, and then, I did my detox protocol. It was like a few days. They have a big like 12-step thing on the wall. And I remember reading one and I was like, cool, I got that one done. I read the next one. I was like, dope, I got that one done. I feel good about it. I'm just like reading, I'm like thinking in my mind, I'm like, yep,
Yep. We all
perfect.
go through
I'm
that.
on like the fourth one or fifth one at this point.
Yeah.
And anyways, we'd gone to some different meetings and I really resonated with some of them. And yeah, it was like suggested to me to get a sponsor, in a certain 12-step program. And so I did that. I went that route. And during that time, we did the cognitive behavioral therapy stuff. I got to see a lot of my flawed thinking. I got to see a lot of my consequences that I was actually completely delusional about too.
Hmm.
I was unaware of my consequences. And I was judging you guys for having these
You
consequences. I'm like, y'all suck.
get to learn that you have a side of the street.
Oh, dude, I remember hearing somebody being like, I got a DUI and I told them my car and like they'd be like, and I lost my wife. And I'm like, you guys are really sad. And all that shit happened to me, dude. I lost my marriage. I freaking have totaled my car completely drunk, gotten a DUI. I've gotten fired from 2 jobs because of drinking, you
Yeah.
know. But for some reason when I was judging other people, I like was like, oh, you guys are weird.
Yeah.
Uh, but I got to go through that, man, and that process, once I got out of rehab and continued to work with a sponsor, dude, actually completely changed my fucking life, man. Like that that shift, it felt, I just remember one day thinking like, this is how the world has changed. Like the world has changed for me. This is how like the world is completely different
Hmm.
right now, as I see it. It was like this aha moment where I was just like, yo, this is crazy. Like I cannot believe the perspective I have now. Everything is different. Everything is different
That
in a good way.
perception shift is huge. Once it's funny too because it's like so corny, right? Like they talk about the perception change, and then there's even like the book in the program, the new pair of glasses, right? And it sounds so goofy, but that's literally what it's like. It's like putting on a new pair of glasses, and now suddenly you just see the world completely different than how you did before. Like now, if I'm standing somewhere and I'm out in public and there's a screaming baby, I'm not all fucking pissed off. I'm just like, oh, poor little buddy. I'm like, I know, dude, I feel you.
I
You
feel
know,
you
it's like,
exactly.
if my parents or if somebody asks me for a favor or asks me to do this or asks me to do that, like it's yeah, no problem. I got you. And I'm like ready to show up and do these things. And it's like, it's not some like big, huge, extravagant event that I'm doing somebody a favor. It's just like you just go fucking handle it. And it's like
Yeah.
get to do those things today, and showing up for work, even like work, right? Like I always before I got clean and sober, like I sold artwork and I decorated houses, dude. I had a fucking badass job, right? But I still dreaded going to fucking work half the time because it was getting in way of me day drinking and partying and doing whatever the fuck I wanted. So like of course I was resentful going to work, even though I was doing dope shit, right? And today it's like, dude, I get to we get to save people's lives in this field, and it's like yeah, sometimes the phone calls can suck when it's like I'm in the movie theater and I'm getting a call, or it's Christmas and I'm getting a call, or Thanksgiving and I'm getting a call. But other than those, like, those brief moments, it's I wouldn't change it for the world, dude. And it's like I'm so grateful to show up today and do this job. And that's not I the old me wouldn't look at it the same way, for sure.
Yeah, even in those moments where it feels like, where it feels like a hassle, the old me would never even reflect on those at any point because, I've had those moments where I've been like, oh, I'm having a date night or something, and I'm like, let me step out. My wife's super cool with my job, and is extremely supportive with me in my recovery. And it's just me in my own head, still.
Yeah.
And and then I might be like, oh, I got a little frustrated, and then I'd be like, but I got to fucking be there for somebody, just like someone was there for me in so many aspects, not just the person answering the phone, but the different people that attend different 12-step meetings and like show up every week and, hold that seat and share their story and extend their hand. And like when I went to this 12-step meeting out here near where I live, because I live in like the Chino Riverside area, it was like these dudes have been going to this meeting for 30 years, you
Yep.
know, every week.
Mm-hmm.
And I just happen to show up and now I get to be a part of it, but these dudes every week show up like to this meeting for the last like 30 years. I'm like, thank you.
Yep.
Thank you for being there. Cause I was like, how can I was like kind of scared. It was just post pandemic and I had moved from Orange County where, my recovery scene was. And I was like, oh, how's it gonna be out here in Chino? And the dudes were just awesome, man. And they didn't know I was coming that week or that year or, that decade even, but they
Yeah.
just keep showing up.
Yep.
Me, that's how I felt anyways. And today I get to take inventory of my life. And when I do that, dude, it blows me away. I could not have told myself, I could not have tricked myself into thinking that anything that I have today, and I'm not talking about like, I'm not talking about outside stuff. I'm talking about how I feel about myself, my connection with myself, a power greater than myself, and other people. Like I did not know how to first how to connect with myself.
Yeah.
I didn't know how to do that. And I didn't know how to connect with other people, like other than through using or drinking, or partying. I mean, there were moments, sure, there were always moments in my life where I felt like genuine connection with people, but nothing like I feel today.
Yeah.
You know?
Nothing like what we have today. I mean, it's today I don't need an external, and I don't need anything external to help me feel okay with myself on the inside, right? And so like I still have aspirations, I still have goals, but like if this is as good as it ever gets, I'm totally cool with that, right? I'm totally happy here, and even if I lose the stuff that I have in my life today, right? Like I'm regardless of what happens, I'm okay with who I am today, and I know that I can walk through things in life sober today. And really in the last year, like a lot of the things that, like, going into this deal that were kind of not reservations, but like things in life that you're going to have to go through, that you're going to have to see, right? Like when the rubber meets the road, is this thing really going to work, and I've walked through things now in my sobriety where I've came out the other end, and it's like, dude, it would, drinking or using was never a thought. It's like going, going through like all the different stuff with like the fear with like mine and my wife's plans having to shift, with her going back to school for a year and like having to basically like take a 2 year pause on buying a house, and like not getting what I want yesterday, and going through that, and then her going back to work and us having like a 6 month outline and plan for when we were gonna go buy a house, and then her just being like, I want to start my own business, because she's doing the cosmetology deal, and her working somewhere is not nearly as smart as her, doing her own thing, and us being like, okay, let's build this. And then with recently going through the death of her father, my father-in-law, it was amazing, right? I love my father-in-law. And being able to walk through something like that, to show up for my wife day in and day out, and for the two of us to really walk through it and come out the other end and like be okay, right? Like that's not the type of stuff that like it's the type of stuff that like I in the back of my mind always knew would happen, but like until you go through it, you just kind of don't really know what to expect, and
Yeah.
I've lost grandparents before, but never like, a parent, right? I still have both my parents, and up until recently my wife had both of hers. So it was just like to be able to to go through those things, right? If I didn't have that keystone and that foundation built that I'm on, who knows what it would have looked like, and
Oh,
other
for
than a
sure.
couple brief moments of like, dude, I wish I could press pause and take a nap and come back in 24 hours and pick up right here. Like, other than
Yeah.
like that feeling, right? It was never like I need to go check out, or I need to get loaded, or this is too much, or we can't handle this, right? It was what see what the next day is going to bring, and show up and do the next indicated step. All the basic shit that we get taught in the program, right, is put into action in life. And the rubber met the road, and we just kept rolling.
And it's so basic. And that's like, that's what makes it so cool is like the process. And we've gathered enough data, to know that like, okay, we can act in faith, we can. But
Mhm.
those initial 6 months, year, and even in situations like this, where it's like big tragedies and big events and big losses,
Yeah.
we can gather that data and it strengthens us to take whatever's placed in front of us and to help other people, because I'm a I'm a firm believer that, in getting through the things that we've been able to get through, not by our own merits, but by doing what has been done before us and somebody helping us through that process. And it's almost like therapeutic in a sense to help, someone else through that process. And it just like reinstills that this stuff works, man. Like I can't explain it. I can't explain why. I don't like my mind doesn't work like that. I don't know if I care too much, but it fucking works, dude. Like I couldn't have told myself this though, when I was in the middle of everything. If I would like be able to go back in time like Marty McFly and see myself in Back to the Future, like could I go up to myself and be like, bro, just hold on, like there's so many cool things in front of you. Just, you're loved, you're you're an amazing human. Just don't do anything too drastic to where you don't have another day.
Yeah.
And and dude, and I did do things drastic where me here today is a miracle, by all definitions. And I did a lot of stupid things. I put myself in, bad situations where I could have harmed myself or somebody else seriously,
Yeah.
and for whatever reason, I get to be here. Many people don't, many people don't. And I'm so grateful that I'm able to see this side of it, and
Get your life back, and got
yeah,
your life
dude.
back, got married, having a kid. Like, it's amazing. It keeps rolling, and it keeps happening. And it's so beautiful. Like we get to just show up in life today and just enjoy it and remember it, you know. There's not, it's never, we're never trying to piece together memories on stuff. Like we get to be here for it and absorb it and just like roll through it, man. It's that trudge of happy destiny, dude, and it's just such a blessing to experience.
What has been something that is like that you look back at and you're just like, I can't believe, you know, I can't believe I'm where I'm at right now.
I think for me, what I when I think back to my thinking, right? My buddy Ryan, I was in rehab with. I love my buddy Ryan. So Ryan's the type of dude, he was just a super salesman kind of guy, right? That's just how he was. And we used to sit there in rehab with like a couple weeks sober and watch like Shark Tank, and he'd be like trying to come up with ideas for Shark Tank and shit. He'd always want to like he'd always sold cars, and he really wanted to like, have his own business. And it's like fast forward now 7 years, like he's got his own business. He's killing it. He's doing speaking engagements. Like he's got his wife, right? His wife used to drive from Arizona all the way out to California to treatment to come see him when she was just his girlfriend back in the day. And she was like holding it down for the set, dude.
Wow, dude.
She'd leave Arizona at like 5 in the morning to like get there on time for like family visitation before she drove back home to Arizona just to come see him. And like the two of them have a beautiful life. Like he's got his kids in his life. They got a badass house, and he's killing it, right? But we used to sit there in group and talk about like what we wanted out of life. And like mine and Ryan's relationship, it was just always totally like the duality of man, right? Like he wanted something totally different than I wanted, but we just had a ton of fun together. And I would always like I would just like the picturing like the life that I have today, it just always seemed like cookie cutter to me, dude. And I hated the idea of it. I just hated the idea of like coming home, like that structure of doing the same thing every day, of
And
like
non-chaos.
not chaos, being with the same fucking person. That just sounded boring to me, you know? And it's like, today my wife's my best friend, like if I don't do anything but go to work and come home to like my wife and my cats, dude, that was a huge W,
Hell
right?
yeah.
I try to have structure in my life. I try to have my life operating like a sewing machine. And when I live like that, my life is fucking awesome, right? And it's the complete opposite of where my thinking was, because I was thinking like that even too, right? Like we'd be having those conversations and it'd be like, I'm in it, right? Like I'm trying to fix my life. I'm trying to get sober. I want a better life, right? But I'm just not, I just don't want like that yet. And
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
somewhere along the line that shift happened, and I met my wife, and she came over and she never went home, and the whole time she was like, "Oh, we're going this way," and I was like, "Yes, we're going this way," and it was like before you know it, like it's just we're married, dude, and we're loving it. And
That's
so
awesome.
I think for me that's the probably the biggest thing, that like when I look back at my thinking and just see that complete polarized shift, is just it's remarkable to me.
I love it, man. And I mean, not to confuse anybody, because life is still life. We still have experiences, it's not like, and I still make mistakes. Often I make mistakes. I
Yeah.
still think selfishly. I still, am self-seeking at times. I get into fear for different reasons, or maybe I have a lack mentality. Um, but like today, for the most part, I'm able to identify it, and it doesn't last that long, and I'm able to make it right, and I'm able to, and it's not these big situations anymore. It's
Yeah.
little things. And so I also allow myself grace, to grow and evolve. And yeah, man, I'm just fucking loving life today where I'm at, and you know, try and stay teachable and try and help people where I can. And definitely trust my higher power that he's got everybody, you know.
For
He's got it.
sure. Yeah, whatever your perception of that is, man. I mean, as long I always tell people, as long as you can like get down with the fact that something other than you is, you know,
Yeah.
as long as you're not the one running the show,
Yeah.
like then you're that's enough willingness. That's all you need.
Dude, and I mean, for me, you know, like that's the coolest thing about this like new way of thinking is like it's completely defined by the individual.
Yeah,
It's nothing, and I think that's one thing that I struggle with, you know, was growing up with this super defined higher power. You know, it was like, oh, it's got to be, and I say he, and I'll say God for lack of a better term, but I want it to be clear that in no way is it defined for anybody else, and even for me, you know, it's just some certain tenets, you know, and some certain principles that my higher power exhibits that works for me, you
yep,
know, and that's the coolest thing. And that was just like a complete, you know, mind opening situation for me when I was like, oh, it doesn't have to be this. It doesn't have to be what you think. It doesn't have to be what he thinks. You know, one of my friends was like, somebody said it could be this pole right here because the pole holds the roof up, right? It's bigger than you, right? It's just the concept of saying
it's
it's
just the
not me.
concept. Yep,
No,
exactly.
it's not me running it anymore. And that is I think I think everything, the universe or whatever, that it's not me running stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, and for me too, like my whole time, right, like growing up and going through stuff, I was always like searching, right? And like from a young age, like I was raised Catholic, and then like I really just like basically had some like super simple thoughts, right? Of like, well, there's plenty of people who aren't Catholic, and what, they're just like fucked if they don't believe in Jesus. Like that
You're
just
smarter than me because I didn't have those thoughts.
I would just that just like didn't make sense to me, you know what I mean? And I was just like young, like what the fuck? That's weird.
Dude,
And
every time I meet someone who has those thoughts, I'm always like jealous. I'm like, fuck, I was a little idiot. Like I was just like such a little sheep. I'm like, oh,
uh,
this is
well, for me, what's funny is for me today, right? And I was gonna get into where, you know, how I think now, but it's like I almost wish that like I wish that I could be so sold out on an idea that like that's what I firmly believe. You know,
yeah,
it was a long road of like searching for things and studying this and then studying that and then studying this and then studying that. And then for me, really like the first thing that like I've just instantly felt the presence of everything I've ever been searching for my entire life was like sweating and praying in a Native American Lakota sweat lodge, right? I prayed at a sweat lodge 1 to 2 times a week for basically a little over a year while I was living in Colorado. And that just fully became how I got down with my God, right? I loved it. That was literally everything I was searching for my whole life. And then
so
since I left there and I carried that, right? And I carried it with me. Um, but like ever since I learned really like about people being agnostic and like what the root term like the root of the word just means without knowledge, like that's really what I consider myself, right? Like I know without a doubt that there's something, right? There's something that connects all of us. It, to me, it's just like James Evans is not fucking smart enough to like have that figured out. Whatever it is, dude, like I'm not the shot caller. I'm not the one, you know, everybody's looking for a definition. So I don't need to define it. I just don't feel I need to. Right? I know whatever it is, dude. Everybody who's lived before us and everybody who's gonna live after us will all go back to it one day when we leave here. Everybody's going to the same place, you know, so fuck it, let's just enjoy the time while we're here, you know. And that's what I have, that I carry with me, and it's just like that's what works for me, you know. And that might not work for some other person. Like I know people who will go on tangents in meetings and tell motherfuckers they need to repent and do all that kind of stuff. And it will, you know, wherever you're at's where you're at. But like for me, like I wasn't ready for none of that stuff, you know. And so that's what I have, and it's just like it's continued to work for me day in and day out.
Yeah, I love that. And like you know, I highly respect people that have religious beliefs, and I love that that works for a lot of people. I absolutely do. Um, I do. And I respect that. And I, you know, my parents are still very active Mormon, and they're amazing people, you
Yeah.
know, and it works for them. And and yeah, I'm thankful that, you know, coming into recovery, I don't have to, it doesn't have to be so fixed, because I think sometimes we get fixated on things like that. And so if anyone's listening to this and has any kind of feeling about, you know, what a higher power could look like, and the fact that sometimes in recovery people refer to it, it's definitely not um, it's definitely not anyone else's definition other than one zone.
Yep.
So
Exactly. Well, right on, man. This has been beautiful. I'm super glad I got to have you on here. Definitely glad you hit me up, and we're excited to come on. I really do mean that. That was really my first time having that thought, was sitting at Restore and chatting with you. So it's great that we're able to, sit down and do this, and I was able to hear your story and hang out and talk about God for a little bit.
yeah, dude, that's sweet. I love what you're doing. I'm super proud of you. And you let me know any way I can support. I love this. I love this
Right on,
journey.
man. All right. I
Hi,
appreciate you,
brother.
man. Love
Love you,
you.
man.
Talk to you soon. Thank you for listening to the No More Dead Friends podcast. I'm your host, James Evans. We are not affiliated with any 12-step fellowship. If you are interested in meetings, please seek out a local 12-step meeting in your area. If you or a loved one is struggling with addiction and think that you might need treatment, please call 858-790-1937 to see what treatment options are available to you in your area. If you are having a medical emergency, please dial 911. For information about our clothing line, please go to nomoredeadfriends.etsy.com. The No More Dead Friends podcast is made for educational, promotional, and entertainment purposes. It is essential to understand that the topics discussed in this podcast are based on general knowledge and are not to be considered as professional treatment advice. Please consult with qualified medical professionals before making any decisions or taking any actions based on the information in this podcast.